Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, dear friends in the Chi community, and thank you so much for joining us for an incredibly special moment in Biofield history or herstory today. I'm so thrilled that you're with us, so thrilled for our program today, and do let us know in the chat where you're coming from so that all of our esteemed guests who will be introduced to you momentarily can see where you're coming in from. Jason will enable the chat to make sure that we can learn where you're coming in from for this very special day. Thank you so much for being here. Well, I don't see your notes in the chat yet, so I'm going to assume it's going to be enabled in a second because I know you're a very prolific group that likes to share where you're hailing from. So don't be shy. I definitely would like to know. Today is a very special moment for us here at the Consciousness and Healing Initiative and for our community of biofield scientists and healing practitioners. Here we go. Germany, Reading, Calgary, Carmichael, California, Greece,
San
Germany,
Diego.
again, India, San Diego. Lots of folks from San Diego. Hi, Hollis. Hi, Stacy. Hi, Moral. Lots of you jumping in here. Thank you so much for joining us across the world to celebrate the advancement of biofield science, its innovation, and the next gen of healing researchers. My name is Dr. Shamini Jan, the founder and the president of this beautiful collaborative Consciousness and Healing Initiative. And we're here today to celebrate advancements in the field, incredible young investigators, and a dear friend who many of you know and have known, Reverend Tiffany Barsotti, who's a leading light in biofield science advancement, a leading thinker, a pioneer, and an incredibly graceful human being and healer. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce our board chair, Dr. Paul Mills, who can tell you a little bit about why we're here and what has brought us to this point. Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Shamini. Hello, everyone. And in addition to thanking Shamini, I want to thank the Chi Board of Directors for creating this award and for making it such an integral part of Chi's mission, really. And beyond that, I especially want to thank everyone who donated to the fund, who made the fund possible, who made today possible. And this is going to be going on for many years. And it's all due to the donations. And I want to add, too, that when we first announced the award, we reached our funding goal in about 2 short weeks. And for me, that was that outpouring was really a testimony, another testimony for Tiffany. So this is really a special inaugural event. I'm sitting here in Tiff's old office, and I have Bagheera sitting over there in the chair. That was Tiffany's dear cat, whom she just loves so much. But we're honoring Tiffany's legacy. And as Shamini said, she was such a bright light amongst us, especially for me. And today we're doing our part to advance Tiff's mission and her commitment. And what was her mission and her passion? She was committed to certainly research on the biofield. She was also interested in research on healing, and beyond that, really on human spiritual consciousness. Her book was all about bringing forward ideas on a new direction for integrating the spiritual bodies. And for those of you who don't know about the book, here it is: The Biology of Transformation, the Physiology of Presence and Spiritual Transformation and Transcendence. So many of you who knew Tiffany know how passionate she was in those particular areas. But I want to emphasize another area, which I think she was even more passionate about and certainly more prolific. And that was her dedication to people's well-being. She had clients and students from around the world, thousands and thousands, who looked to her for guidance about how to improve their own well-being and health, and to also just get directions in their life. And that was really a testimony to her too. And those of you who are listening, and I saw some names already, and I know you've taken some of Tiffany's courses or had some personal time with her, you know the reality of what I'm speaking about. She was a light in the world. and a nourishment to all of us. I want to add that one of my joys over the past approximate year and a half since Tiff's passing was to hear from many of you. I heard from, let's say, two types of feedback. One was what I just mentioned, that people were so grateful that Tiffany had been in their life, and some would share more personal stories about how Tiffany guided them through rough times and gave them information and certainly inspiration, and beyond that, her deep unconditional love that we all experienced to guide them. I also heard from quite a few scientists who had been feeling stuck in their research careers and were looking for new directions, meaningful directions, something that was welling up inside of them as something new to do. And they felt fortunate that they had come across Tiffany's work. And that sparked an inspiration for them and also direction for them. And I've certainly, as a scientist myself, appreciated that when we can play a role in other people's lives to direct and advance scientific research for healing and well-being. And today, here we are to listen to two scientists who have been working in these areas of Tiffany's inspiration, the biofield, healing. We'll hear from them, and then we're going to have a conversation with questions and discussion, and some of the questions we'll entertain from you who are listening. So to close, I want to say again, I'm grateful to Chi and the many donors who have created this, and all the applicants who applied for the award this year, our inaugural award year. It's been honestly a pleasure and inspiring for me. It's touched me deeply. And I know Tiff's smiling at this moment, not just for the recognition, but that her passion, her work is being followed up on and advanced. So thank you, everyone. Now I'm going to introduce Richard now, who's the chair of the awards committee, and he'll be carrying the next phase of this event.
Thanks so much, Paul, for evoking the spirit of Tiffany. That is a reason why we're all here and we're all together, and a main reason why Chi has reached the stage that it has, for her guidance and input, and so many people who resonated with her that were also part of our wonderful Chi community. And as you said, today we have the unique pleasure, the first annual awardees of the Tiffany Memorial Award, and each will present us with an overview of their award-winning research project. And what we'll do is each one will have roughly 20 minutes to present each of the two winners. And after each talk, if you look in your bottom menu, you'll see the Q&A. So if you have a brief question, don't put it in the chat, please. Put it in the Q&A, and I will look through those, and we'll have time for 2, maybe 3 questions after each talk. And after both talks, then we'll have a panel discussion. We'll be joined by 2 Biofield luminaries and practitioners, along with Shamini and Paul and myself, and we'll try to broaden the talks and with the guidance of the panel. So without more ado, it's a great pleasure for me to introduce the first of our 2 awardees, who is Nicole Hocking, who everybody seems to call her Kiki. So Nicole is a very recent PhD. She earned her PhD in transpersonal psychology earlier this year from Sophia University up in Palo Alto. And her winning research study was called Biologic Sovereignty, the Impact of Daily Self-Reiki on Stress Levels of University Students. And rather than try to describe anything more of who she is, I was so taken by two statements in her nomination. We asked each of the applicants to write a brief nomination statement. So here's part of what Kiki had to tell us. My dissertation bridges empirical research with participants' lived experience, demonstrating how inquiry into self-healing can illuminate new dimensions of biofield research. Doesn't that capture what we're all about? As both a Reiki biofield therapist and a transpersonal psychologist and researcher, I have approached this work with deeply reverent curiosity and a commitment to honoring the subtle, often ineffable aspects of biofield practices while grounding them in scientific rigor. My doctoral research culminated in the development of what I call centropic healing cartography, CHC, which is a novel theoretical framework that maps the dimensional and conscious nature of healing. So it's my pleasure to offer all of you in Zoom land Kiki Hocking.
Thank you, Richard. I'm going to share my presentation here. You can all see it? Yeah. Okay, good. Okay. So as Richard said, I'm Kiki Hocking. I'm a transpersonal psychologist. I'm also a Reiki master, and I'm honored to share insights from my doctoral research at Sophia University. Before I begin, I want to take a moment to recognize the legacy of the Reverend Tiffany Barsotti, for whom this award was created. Her work and presence continue to ripple through this field, reminding us that true healing is both science and spirit, inquiry and devotion. The study I'll be discussing explored the impact of daily self-Reiki on stress and well-being in college students using a mixed methods design. The title, Biologic Sovereignty, reflects the overarching insight that emerged through this research: the capacity for individuals to regulate their own systems and restore coherence from within. I'm pleased to share that this study was recently published in the Journal of American College Health, a peer-reviewed journal focused on student well-being. It felt especially meaningful to see Reiki included in this kind of publication, a reflection of how integrative approaches are beginning to find their way into mainstream conversations about health. This study stemmed from my own self-Reiki practice, which has been a steady source of regulation for me for many years, and from watching my daughter navigate the stresses of college. The purpose was to explore whether self-Reiki could serve as a self-regulation strategy for stress management and support students' sense of empowerment in caring for their health. The research question that guided this study was, what effects does a 10-minute daily self-Reiki practice over 4 weeks have on the perceived stress levels of university students? This study is significant in part because there's still a real scarcity of research on self-Reiki. At the same time, stress has reached epidemic levels, with university students ranking among the most affected. Using a mixed methods design, this research brought together quantitative data and lived experience.
It contributes to the growing field of biofield science and lays the foundation for future studies on self-Reiki's ability to support both mental and physical well-being. More broadly, this work speaks to what I call biologic sovereignty, the recognition that individuals have the inherent power to influence their biological and psychological states and to actively participate in their healing process. In doing so, it invites a shift beyond the limitations of the traditional biomedical paradigm. It also holds potential for informing self-regulation and wellness programs in academic settings. This study used a convergent mixed methods design with 36 university students. Half were assigned to a control group. The experimental group was attuned to Reiki level 1 and practiced self-Reiki for 10 minutes daily over 4 weeks. The control group read health-related articles for 10 minutes each day during this period. At week 4, the control group transitioned to the intervention, allowing for additional data at week 8 from both groups. Quantitative data were collected using the perceived stress scale and the general well-being schedule, while qualitative insights were gathered through weekly journal prompts. For the quantitative analysis, 2 sample t-tests were employed to compare differences between the intervention and control groups in baseline measures and changes over time. Additionally, a non-parametric sign test was applied to determine if median changes over time were significantly different from 0. All quantitative analyses were conducted using SAS version 9.4. For the qualitative analysis, weekly journal entries were analyzed using thematic analysis to identify recurring themes and patterns, providing deeper insights into their experiences. Finally, the quantitative and qualitative data sets were compared side by side to assess alignment or divergence, facilitating a comprehensive interpretation of the results through data triangulation. The majority of participants were female and identified as African American. All participants were full or part-time university students, primarily recruited from Central Virginia universities. Ages ranged from 18 to 35, with an average age of 24.86. In total, 36 participants completed the study. Participants were randomly assigned to intervention and control groups. Despite randomization, the groups were balanced across gender, age, and ethnicity. In looking at the quantitative results, at baseline, there were no significant differences between the intervention and control groups in perceived stress or general well-being. This indicated successful randomization. From baseline to week 4, the intervention group showed a statistically significant reduction in perceived stress, with a mean decrease of 10.89 points. The control group also experienced a decrease, though this change was not statistically significant and likely due to their assigned activity of reading health-related articles. In terms of general well-being, the intervention group saw a statistically significant improvement with a mean increase of 32.67 points, while the control group's improvement was smaller and not significant. From week 4 to week 8, the control group began practicing self-Reiki and subsequently experienced a statistically significant reduction in stress and an improvement in well-being. Here are the detailed tables displaying the p-values for the quantitative results. These visually highlight the statistically significant changes in perceived stress and general well-being across the intervention and control groups, reinforcing the effectiveness of self-Reiki over time. The qualitative findings revealed several key themes in how self-Reiki influence students' stress levels, well-being, and personal growth. Stress reduction and management. The majority of participants described feeling calmer, more relaxed, and better able to manage stress. It definitely helped me relax later in the day, which is when my stress levels were highest. For the most part, yes, my stress has reduced, especially at night. Physical and emotional sensations. Many reported warmth, tingling, and deep relaxation, leading to a greater sense of balance. Feels like it goes through my whole body, makes me tired, happy, calm, concentrated. Increased self-awareness and mindfulness. For many, self-Reiki heightened emotional awareness and supported self-regulation. I am more aware of my emotions throughout the day and use more intentional focus to calm down and re-regulate. Commitment and routine. Despite initial challenges as busy students, many developed a consistent practice and noticed lasting benefits. Yes, I have and will continue practicing self-Reiki indefinitely following this study. Desire for community and continued learning. Some expressed interest in connecting with others and exploring Reiki further. If a community can be formed, I'd want to be a part of it. These themes reflect how self-Reiki evolved from an experiment into an empowering tool for stress relief, self-regulation, and well-being. Self-Reiki can be positioned as an easy, brief, and accessible practice, one that supports regulation and well-being anytime and anywhere. Integrating it into campus wellness programs alongside yoga and meditation could help create a more comprehensive, integrative approach to student flourishing. Of course, this study had limitations. A small sample size, reliance on self-report data, and no long-term follow-up. Future studies with larger samples could incorporate physiological markers such as HRV or EEG and include instruments like the non-dual awareness dimensional assessment to further explore the centeredness quality reported in the qualitative data. What this study also revealed through both data and reflection is how quickly regulation can occur when individuals engage their own field intentionally. Even brief daily practice appeared to support a reorganization of the system toward calm and coherence. Recognizing health as both a personal journey and a relational process challenges conventional models of care and invites approaches that prioritize self-regulation and biologic sovereignty so that we are not just empowered in the traditional sense, but powerful, through which things like neuroplasticity and epigenetics become possible. Thank you for your attention and for the work each of you are doing in this vital and evolving field. Together, we're expanding what's possible in whole person healing. Thank you.
Oh, Richard, you're muted.
Yeah.
Sorry, I unmuted me halfway through, but somebody muted me again. Nikki, I was just saying, I wish you could hear the applause that's coming for you from all over the world at this moment, and how wonderfully you captured, not just in your verbal presentation, but in the fonts of your slides, the beauty of your slides, and you captured exactly what you said, the rigor of science with the ineffable qualities of what you're trying to do the research on. So I don't see any questions on the chat, so I'm going to take the chair's prerogative and just ask you to talk a little more about what was the self-Reiki protocol that you used. And more interestingly to me is you had to train your subjects, your participants to do this. And then how did you know when they got it, when they would be ready to launch on their own?
Okay. What was the protocol? Well, I developed an online program, Reiki level 1. So they all had the identical training. I was I got an email when they finished the course, and then I attuned them. Having a Reiki level 1 attunement means you're ready. Reiki's supremely intelligent. It's not rocket science. It's supremely intelligent. It's not rocket science. Um, so they're ready when they're attuned. What was the second part of your question, Richard? I can't remember.
Just describe for us a bit so we get a sense of what the self-Reiki involved.
Okay, yeah. I had each of them one hand to heart, actually right hand to heart, left hand to the abdomen, and to turn the hands on, to draw the symbol on each hand, and to place the hands in this position only. So we know there are a lot of Reiki hand positions head to toe, covering all of the chakra systems and what have you. But I chose this for simplicity, and it's my own, this is how I practice self Reiki every morning. Reiki knows where to go. So whether I'm doing this or this, it's going to go, if my big toe needs the Reiki, that's where it's going to go. So this was the protocol, was to have them all do exactly the same thing, to keep that, controlled, for 10 minutes a day. And then they had a log where they logged each day.
Good.
And then the journal every week. So just for compliance reasons, to kind of watch what they were doing.
10 minutes a day. Yeah. 10 minutes a day, one position. Amazing.
That is impressive. Yeah.
And I think that's the big takeaway is that a small, consistent practice can have a big impact.
Yeah. I'd like to make a comment, Kiki, particularly around just the title and the focus of your work, the sovereignty piece. I mentioned in my brief introduction about Tiffany, she was a therapist, and people came to her from all over, and her goals all the time were to see the person one time, maybe two, and they would then be equipped to move on, like maximum of 3 times. And she just wanted them out of the office and on their own. And that is generally always what happened. So she would like this presentation because she encouraged sovereignty and self-regulation so much so. So thank you for your work.
Richard, I see a question in the Q&A.
I wasn't there 1 minute. Okay, great. So we have a question that is actually 2 questions. What did you meet with any resistance when you first introduced this kind of research? And building on the study, what sort of epigenetic markers do you think there could be explored to understand how self-Reiki influences stress and well-being? So the first question was, Did you meet with any resistance when you first proposed the study?
I was at Sophia University, so no resistance there.
Right.
We're all about it. But but actually, so that's within the, transpersonal people talking to transpersonal people. When I was doing my recruiting, there were people that, I didn't get some great messages from people when I was posting on Reddit, like this is woo-woo, or this, I guess they're giving out PhDs to anybody was probably one of the more offensive remarks. So there is resistance to, I guess, the idea of Reiki or biofield therapies in general. Um, but overall, I was able to successfully recruit the number of people that I did, and none of them had any experience with Reiki beforehand. It was brand new to them. By the end, most of them were excited. I would say the majority said they would continue to do it, though not on a daily basis, as we had, you know, subscribe prescribed, but more as needed. Most of them said, I will definitely do it, but as needed. And one of the things that surprised me was that the students initially had a little bit of trouble getting just that 10 minutes in. And I thought, wow, that's that's just 10 minutes. But for a busy college student who, we're talking about Gen Z, attention span's not super long. So 10 minutes was asking a lot for them, but they ended up saying the benefits outweighed trying to incorporate it into their day. So I think that was your first question, was the resistance piece, and the second was
Second part
epigenetics.
was any epigenetic markers that you have been thinking about that could be used as measures of stress.
Transpersonal psychology is more my lane,
Mhm.
but I'm sure there are some biomarkers that we could use. I don't know. It's really not my lane, so I hesitate to answer.
Sure, sure. No, I mean, if
But I
you
think
if
about
you
like what the work that like Joe Dispenza is doing, for example, or Bruce Lipton talks a lot about epigenetics, and I'm inspired by that.
sure. Well, thank you so much. And maybe I could embarrass you just a tiny bit and ask you to hold up so people can see
Oh,
the plaque that you received from
oh.
Chi for
Well,
this.
that's not embarrassing.
Okay, good.
I don't know. Can y'all see it?
We can see it very well. I certainly can see it against
Yeah.
the black of your sweater.
Maybe you could raise it just a little bit, Kiki, so we can see the whole thing. Awesome.
There, I get my hair out of the way.
Congratulations to
Lovely,
you.
lovely, lovely.
Congratulations to you. And thank you for your
Yeah.
amazing work. And
Thank you
a
very much.
bright future ahead for you with your research.
Thank
Yes.
you. Super
And just
honored.
so our audience knows, in addition to the plaque, each of our awardees received a $1,000 honorarium to put towards future research studies. So it's now my great pleasure to introduce our second awardee, Rona Geffen, who's coming to us from Israel. She lives mainly in Athens, but she is in, I believe, the land of her birth right now, which is Israel. Rona is quite an amazing multidisciplinary and transdisciplinary researcher and person in the world. Um, she, just to list a few of her professional talents, she's a sound medicine practitioner, an artist, um, a music composer, performer, and producer. So she has uh, blended her research along with her her production desires and her performing desires and her compositional talents. So it's a pleasure to introduce Rona to you, and the title of her research paper was The Effects of Geometric Sound, and she'll explain to you definitely what geometric sound is, on brainwave activity patterns, autonomic nervous system markers, emotional response, and Faraday wave pattern morphology. Her paper was published in Evidence-Based Complementary and Alternative Medicine last year. This is one of the leading journals in the complementary and alternative medicine field. It's a great pleasure to introduce you now to Rona Geffen.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rona. I'll just share my screen. So, can everybody see everything? Okay. So I'm Rona Geffen, and I'm here to discuss my work on geometric sound and how we can really harness geometry, mathematics, and sound holography in health. I just want to first say that indeed this project originated from an artistic, scientific audiovisual composition, which is titled The Sound is the Scenery, in which I investigated what happens if I immerse people in three-dimensional solid holograms of geometric shapes. This was done after a lot of research that I'd done on all the components of this study. And since no one really took it seriously, I said, okay, I'll just prove that this really works because it should work. I know it works. So a little bit very briefly about the interdisciplinary background components of this study. We have geometry and mathematics that reside everywhere in nature. We see geometric patterns and numeric sequences from atoms formation to planets rotation patterns. And this is perceived by researchers to adhere to efficient energy distribution. We further see sound very present in anything related, geometry and mathematics very present in anything related to sound. So we see it either in its mathematical harmonic ratios, which also reside in nature in different components, but also in its standing wave formations. So in its two-dimensional, let's say, form, it's called Chladni figures, after Ernst Chladni, who first reported it. These are images that were drawn by Mary D. Weller. With Chladni figures, we sprinkle grainy material on flat surfaces and place sound underneath, and we see these patterns that emerge on the surface, and they become more and more detailed the higher the frequency goes. In its three-dimensional form, it's called either cymatics, which is the term that is maybe more commonly used, or Faraday waves after Michael Faraday, who first reported it in 1831. So with Faraday wave, we see these patterns in water, actually. So we have a three-dimensional cuvette or cell that is filled with water. We play sound underneath it, and then we take a picture or a video of the patterns that are being created on top of this on the water surface. Very importantly, both with Chladni figures and Faraday wave pattern formation, we know that they are, and this is established in the literature, they are established according to the boundary condition of the observed medium and the excitation frequency. So each frequency will produce a different pattern. It's important for what we're going to see next. Last but not least, of course, we have sound medicine and spatial sound technology that took a great part in the study. Sound medicine is an ancient practice that was used all over the world in different cultures. We use in sound medicine various instruments that produce sound that is very rich in overtones, very nourishing, to relieve both physical and emotional turmoil. With spatial sound technology, I'll very briefly explain what it is. So when we talk about technology, how we project sound outwards via technology, we first started with mono, so a single point directional sound coming out. Now we usually listen to sound in stereo, so we have either when we mix the sound or when we hear it, it's between these 2 points, everything on this lane. But with three-dimensional sound or spatial sound projections, we can actually create a three-dimensional, very intricate sound field or sound image a hologram of sound and encapsulate, or the professional term is immerse, people and objects within that sound field that is three-dimensional, and this is what was used in this study. So my hypothesis was that since geometry and mathematics are innate frameworks, they are prone to bring biological systems into coherency. Therefore, geometric mathematical information could be applied externally and then employed internally using geometric holograms, projections of spatial sound to bring natural systems into a coherent state, including human physiology. This is conveyed by a geometric kind of feedback loop. Since everything is constructed from geometry and mathematics, this is the baseline of health. And then when we get noisy in reality, when we introduce this geometry, this coherent geometry, back to any natural system, the body or any natural system will entrain or will synchronize itself into its coherent geometric healthy state. And this may sound a bit woohoo to some people, but I just want to quickly show here a quote from Einar Thorstein, who said that Buckminster Fuller, the renowned and very important physicist, one told, explained to her that because our world is constructed from geometric relations like the golden ratio and Fibonacci series, just by thinking about geometry all the time, one could organize and harmonize their life with the structure of the world. So geometric sound is sonic holograms of mathematically defined three-dimensional geometric shapes. It's very important that the mathematics is very precise. We really made a good effort to do that, worked with mathematicians in that. And like Richard said, the study was published in Evidence and Based Complementary and Alternative Medicine with my colleague for the data analysis, Professor Christopher Brown from Tübingen University, showing novel and shape-dependent effects on all our analysis paradigms. Study design. So we had two separate experiments, one monitoring 20 people, one 30 people, with an overall of 50 young healthy adults, with 22 female, 28 male. In the first experiment with the 20 people, we measured two geometric sound shapes. So we had the sphere and the pyramid. Our control condition was stereo, and participants were also monitored for the baseline conditions for 5 minutes. So each sound stimulus was presented for 5 minutes. In the second experiment with 30 people, we introduced another geometric shape, which was the cube. So overall participants were monitored for 5 minutes of baseline condition, no sound. Then we had the control, which is stereo, and the geometric sound shapes, pyramid, sphere, and cube, which of course all sound stimuli were played in alternating order, everyone all exposed for 5 minutes. The monitored biomarkers were EEG, so brain waves, autonomic nervous system. We monitored blood pressure and heart rate only in the first experiment, and behavioral response with a combination of questionnaires like the EEG, also in both experiments. We can see here one of our colleagues who monitored the EEG, Dr. Anat Barnea, during the experiment. And then the samples, so we recorded this three-dimensional sound shape to a stereo recording and sent it for a Faraday wave or cymatic analysis at the CymaScope Labs in the UK. This is the CymaScope, so I don't know if you can see my cursor, but this see-through thing is the cuvette that is filled with water. The sound is coming from underneath. Here on top there is a camera. This is a light ring, and the camera actually captures the images that the patterns that are on the surface of the water. The sound stimuli that was used was produced by two unweighted or high frequency tuning forks manufactured by Acutonics in the frequencies of 272.2 hertz and 544.4 hertz, played simultaneously. They are high frequencies of 136.10 hertz, which is widely used in sound medicine for grounding, for relaxation, and is also now proven by scientific research to be very beneficial. So the tuning forks were played, recorded, then looped, and the exact same loop was projected in all the geometric sound shapes and the control. Very important to say, all the sound stimuli was played on the exact same speaker configuration with the exact same perceived loudness. And they were also constructed with the same diameter and measurements and measurements. So, for example, the base of the cube is identical to the base of the pyramid. So we really made sure that the only variant in the study is the spatial projection or the three-dimensional geometric projection of the sound. Everything else was completely identical. Again, all participants exposed to all sound stimuli in randomized order, 5 minutes each sound stimuli. So, results. With the brainwaves, first of all, in the first experiment, we saw very interesting and unpredicted result. We saw a significant decrease in the alpha band with all sound stimuli, but especially with the geometric sound shapes. We also saw a significant decrease in the beta 2 band. This was very interesting. We definitely didn't predict, and we saw also a different decrease between the sound projections, so between the sound stimuli. So we wanted to explore that more. Then in the second experiment, again, 30 people, again, we saw this significant decrease with all sound stimuli in the alpha band, but we also saw a significant decrease in the delta band, beta 1, beta 2, and gamma bands, only with the geometric sound shapes and not with the control. And important to say that in all these results, we see most heightened results to the pyramid compared to the other sound stimuli. So this was very interesting, and we said, okay, let's explore this more, let's see what else we have here. Then we went to topographic analysis. With the topographic analysis, again, we had very interesting results. You can see here, so the red dots indicate a significant response during exposure to the sound stimuli compared to the baseline. And we see symmetric topography only while people are exposed to the geometric sound shapes and not the control. So symmetric topography between the right and left hemispheres. We also see that there is enhanced topographic activity only when in other frequency bands, only when people are exposed to the geometric sound shapes and not the control, which present results only with the alpha band. And importantly, here again, we see more results in the pyramid compared to the other sound shapes. These results strengthen the results that we saw with the power amplitude. They repeat the same patterns. We said, okay, let's look at this a little bit further and deeper. So we started looking in the connectivity patterns. And then again, we see different, varied, and distinct connectivity pattern per each geometric sound projection, with the most response in when people are exposed to pyramid. The most significant or lot of result we have in the alpha band again, and again we see more response during exposure to the geometric sound shapes compared to the control, which was stereo. The red lines indicate significant connectivity patterns during exposure to the geometric sound shape or to sound stimuli compared to baseline, and blue line enhanced connectivity pattern in baseline compared to the sound stimuli. Then we said, okay, maybe there's also a difference between the sound projections. And then indeed in the alpha band we have in 8 hertz between pyramid and sphere, and in 12 hertz between stereo and cube, enhanced connectivity, varied connectivity patterns. Important to say that we see this response of geometric sound enhanced connectivity patterns in response to geometric sound compared to baseline, also in higher frequency bands, in the beta 2 and the gamma bands. It's a bit more sporadic, so I'm not showing it here, but we do show it. This again enforces our results in topography and in power amplitude. And very important, since we saw that power amplitude actually decreases, this means that the connectivity patterns are of high significance, because if power amplitude would have increased, it of course makes sense that we have more connectivity because we have more neurons firing. But since we see the power amplitude decrease, we see more efficient, the brain working more efficiently and actually connecting itself to itself more efficiently, even with a decrease in power amplitude. Next, in the first experiment, we also measured autonomic nervous system with heart rate and blood pressure. These are our results for heart rate. We have statistical significance in general, so male and female participants in heart rate during exposure to sphere and stereo. The reason we believe we don't have significant results in pyramid, which did show significant results in all other analysis paradigms, is because that due to technical reasons in the first experiment, only 10 people were exposed to pyramid, only 9 were qualified with the EEG, and therefore it's not a good enough number for statistical significance. But when we then divided the group for male and female participants, because with male and female they have a different baseline, we saw that both male and female started the experiment with what is considered average heart rate for people in their age group and their gender in a resting state. So participants were sitting in the base vertical level of the sound projection with eyes closed. But during exposure to the geometric sound shapes, male heart rate reduced to what is considered good, and during exposure to the stereo, which is the control, it remained average. With female participants, we see that during exposure to all sound stimuli, their heart rate decreased to what is considered great for their age group in a resting state. Then with the blood pressure, we see again a significant decrease in systolic blood pressure during exposure to all sound stimuli, mostly in stereo and sphere, probably again because of that reason. But we still have statistical significance with pyramid, just not as strong. This is extremely high statistical significance with stereo and sphere. And we also see a decrease in diastolic baseline between in the diastolic blood pressure between baseline and the sphere. We also see a different reaction again between male and female. So generally female participants reacted to all sound stimuli, while male participants reacted more to the geometric sound stimuli compared to the control, the stereo. We don't know why this happens, but we definitely saw it happening also with the heart rate. And this is very interesting, definitely something we will be interested in researching more in the future. There was no correlation between shape and sex factors. Then we also measured participants for their emotional response with questionnaires. So important to say, with the previous markers I showed, participants were monitored during or after each stimulus, but with the emotional response, they were monitored after being exposed to all the exposure to all of the sound. So in the first experiment, 15 minutes of sound, and in the second experiment, since we had one more shape, 20 minutes of sound. In the first experiment with this custom questionnaire that was composed by me, we see very high statistical significance in improved relaxation, high statistical significance in reduced fear, and statistical significance in reduced frustration and improved physical sense. In the second experiment, we have stronger results, so we see very high statistical significance in improved relaxation, reduced fear, reduced frustration, high statistical significance in reduced depression, and statistical significance in improved happiness and confidence. One of the reasons that we might have heightened result in the second experiment compared to the first experiment is that people were exposed to the sound for 5 minutes more, so an overall of 20 minutes, and maybe this caused the heightened results. Then we said, okay, let's look at both experiments with this questionnaire that was presented in both experiments together and see the results. So these results are for 48 people overall. We see a very high statistical significance in improved relaxation, reduced fear, reduced frustration, and high statistical significance for reduced depression, improved confidence, and improved happiness. In the second questionnaire, in the second experiment, we also monitored the participant with the MDMQ questionnaire, which is a validated and highly used questionnaire in behavioral studies. It has an overall of 30 items. We had statistical significance in 9 items out of the 30. So we have a very high statistical significance in improved sense of relaxation and deep relaxation, reduced nervousness, and reduced bad feeling, high statistical significance in improved feeling of being rested, and statistical significance in reduced restlessness, worn out, uneasy, and unhappy feeling. So overall, we definitely see that people are having more positive feelings and a sense of self, and less negative feelings after exposure to the sound stimuli. Last but definitely not least, our results with the Faraday wave pattern formation. So just to quickly remind you that Faraday wave pattern formation is usually established, it is determined by the frequency, excitation frequency, and the boundary condition of the observed medium. So circular medium will have circular patterns, cubic or square mediums will have square patterns, and so on. Here again, we had the exact same frequency measured all in a circular cuvette. We see that the pyramid geometric sound shape resulted in a triangular pattern. The cube geometric sound shape resulted in a square pattern in a circular cuvette. And the sphere geometric sound shape resulted in a circular pattern in a circular cuvette. This result is novel in the field of Faraday wave. So saying that the Faraday waves are determined according to the excitation frequency and boundary condition of observed medium is established in the literature, both with sound excitation and mechanical excitation. The reason we believe why we see these different patterns that are really redefining the understanding of Faraday wave pattern formation is because of the holographic principle of sound. So the holographic principle of sound said that each sound fragment or particle includes all of its spectral, topographic, and rhythmic properties. And therefore, even if we record a three-dimensional sound object in a stereo recording, it actually includes its three-dimensional topographic properties, and this is what we see here. With these results that are actually very exciting. I did wanted to talk more about sound holography and its applications for health. We believe we can do a lot of work with this method in neurorehabilitation, in supporting depression, in actually molecule formation. And there is other very interesting research in sound holography, in tissue printing, but we don't have so much time, so I'm happy to do it some other time. But for now, these are the references that were referenced here. And I want to thank you very much for your time and for choosing my study for this award. Thank you.
Well, I am no longer muted. Thank you so much, Rona, for this dense but fascinating presentation. I had just one tiny quick, and then I'll go right to the Q&A. If I heard you right, you were immersing people in geometric holograms of the shapes.
Of sound, yes.
Yes, of sound shapes, yes. Did you ever, so that means you're creating the hologram by the sound?
Yes, it's not visible. They are, of course, not aware that they are exposed to different topographic properties of sound. They actually, some of them thought it was really boring.
So that explains I thought you were exposing it to sound within a holographic generated shape. So it's actually, because, well, my question was going to be, have you compared the results within a holographically generated shape to a physical shape of the same dimensions?
I mean, you cannot create a physical shape of sound, because sound, I mean, you could, it is basically a physical shape, but it isn't a holography because
right. So it's the sound.
It is a hologram because it's easier.
Shape. Yes, it's not a shape created independently of the sound.
No, the sound is projected in geometric shapes.
Yes.
It is a hologram of a geometric shape of sound, not visual.
Yep.
So, but a hologram of sound works like a visual hologram, basically. It's just sound and not light.
Yes, Got it. Okay, thank you. Questions from the Q&A. How long did person need to be under the sound in order to record the changes, to develop the changes?
So in this study, we monitored people for 5 minutes. So these all the results we saw here, except for the behavioral results, are after 5 minutes of during 5 minutes of exposure.
Okay, we had a question from George Sakakini, which I think is similar to my fuddle. George asked, how was the three-dimensional sound field produced in the study?
So three-dimensional sound field is produced using three-dimensional sound systems. This is an emerging technology, well, not so new now, it's about 20 years in the market, but is not so widely known and spread. But there are spatial sound or three-dimensional sound systems that produce sound in three-dimensional. In that sense, we have speaker configuration and software that combinedly can project sound in 3 dimension.
Okay.
So just to check on that, because I'm curious about this too. So part of it is also the positioning of the speakers. Yeah. So you have a
No.
system, or are
Yeah.
you positioning the speakers in a certain way to generate that shape, or no?
No, the speakers are constructed how they stand. They have the ability to project sound from a speaker, but also place a sound anywhere between the speakers. With the software, we create a geometric shape, and then with the software, we actually project it in a geometric or any other pattern that is 3 dimensional. But I use geometry, yeah.
Really neat.
A fascinating question from Daniel Lappin. Forgive me if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly, but he says traditional stereo sound is directed to the ears and the vestibular system, but we know that the bones of the body conduct sound, and perhaps other body organs, including the skin, might also process spatial geometric sound as well as vibration and contribute to the physiological coherence. What do you think of how the physiological coherence is being created?
Okay, of course, all our organs are reacting to sound, bones, skin, cells. There are a lot of studies. Also, if people will go look at the study that we published, I didn't have time here to talk about everything. This was a very brief overview, but I do go over a lot of studies that show that. So yes, sound affects every cell in our body. In that sense, every cell and every component in nature is geometric, is constructed according to mathematics. Therefore, according to my hypothesis and what is shown in the study, will react to geometry and mathematics. So will synchronize to the geometry, so to say. We're still building the language of this field as well.
Sure, sure. And a final question from Filomena Baguero. Can you please give us the age range of your sample group, and did any of them have any predisposing neurological conditions?
They were healthy young adults between the ages of 18 to 40. We didn't recruit people that had a condition. We wanted healthy adults. We did monitor in the first experiment people with the depression questionnaire, so the BDI, the Beck Depression Inventory, and there we had 4 participants that did present mild depression prior to the exposure to the sound stimuli, and then that was much improved, and they were again in the normal state, like group after exposure to the stimuli. Since it was only 4 participants, it's not statistically valid. I didn't want to show it. I can say it out loud, but not show results. As for applications for neurology, I'm actually working now on a startup to use sound for neurologic rehabilitation, including, of course, this method. So we see great promise there.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Filomena.
Well, why don't we open this up now to the panel for questions for Kiki or Rona. And we have with us 2 additional members from the Biofield and biofield research communities. We have with us Pamela Miles, the Reiki master and author of Reiki, a Comprehensive Guide, and also Lisa Anselm, who's an RN and executive director of Healing Beyond Borders, which is the organization that educates and certifies healing touch practitioners. So, and Paul and Shamini will join me along with Pamela and Lisa to open up further questions. So who would like to kick that off? Looks like Paul has his hand up.
I did. Thank you, Richard.
Sure.
Thank you, Ron. I so enjoyed your presentation. My question has to do with something you mentioned, that basically under these circumstances, two important things, of course, are the frequency of the sound and the medium. And when you said medium, I started thinking of the human body. And, there's general uniformity across the human body from person to person. But then there's also, of course, the biofield out here and the energetics of that, which I find varies quite a bit from person to person. So my question is, how might this type of therapy differ from person to person in terms of how it affects them for health, well-being, if a person's biofield is not so well tuned or harmonious? Is it going to be harder to have benefits, or will that not matter? So this is just
Well,
question. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. It's very interesting. We didn't do it yet, so I don't know. But I believe and according to my hypothesis, it does work like sound medicine. So in sound medicine, we have a lot of frequencies and a lot of instruments to apply to a person, and then no treatment looks like the other, because in sound medicine, we tune the person to their original healthy vibration, and then we use different frequencies because different people resonate differently, and we have to attune to their frequency and their vibration. So I believe with the geometry it will be the same. We do have to, this is why when people say there will be an algorithm, I don't believe in an algorithm. It is very important to match the geometry and match the sound to the person to make sure that you really have the correct outcome that you want to get to, because otherwise, everything, if it's so strong positively, it might also be strong negatively, and it can't be done. It's not a one size fits all, for sure.
Thank you.
Any other panelists? Shamini, Lisa?
I think Pamela has her hand up, but just before Pamela jumps in, again, I just want to thank the both of you. And, I don't think we mentioned this, but first of all, thank you to everyone who applied and sent in nominations. It was very difficult for us to pick winners. Everyone's applications were really outstanding. And we meant to pick one winner. And I think you can see why we had a lot of trouble doing that, because from our perspective, both of these studies are such advancements to the field, both in terms of the clinical applications, the novelty, the depth, and the rigor. I wanted to, again, just thank you both for being here, for advancing your work in what we know can be a challenging field in terms of getting financial support or even mentorship. And we're just so grateful that you have persisted and are continuing to advance the field. And I felt it was important for us to note that. Pamela, I'll hand it off to you.
I'd like to add my gratitude and congratulations to both of the speakers, and Rona, as I'm a longtime Reiki practitioner, 40 years, and even longer meditator and yoga practitioner. And I've always loved sound healing. I'm not one of the people you had to convince with the research. And it seems to me that Reiki practice could be the unmanifest side of sound healing. In yoga, the anhat chakra, the unstruck sound. So comment if you like, or we can just drop it there. And then I'd like to say something to Kiki.
I mean, I'm sure the idea, I think, for me, at the end, we will maybe move to a paradigm where we find a way to more efficiently combine all these modalities. I think now is relatively new that all of us are in so much communications that we can really check and have these ideas bouncing off each other. It's definitely something very important. And of course, with sound medicine, we work with energy. So yeah, I'm sure you're right. But someone has to do it still.
Well, I never mind hearing somebody say, I'm sure you're right, but I'm not so sure. It's just, it's an interesting perspective. And with research, as you well know, and healing, there's always this dialectic between the expansion of seeing everything as a manifestation of oneness and the rigor that good research requires. So kudos to you for doing such a good job. And also to you, Kiki. I can't tell you how happy I was to see another document about self-practice, because you probably know, this has been my soapbox for literally decades. And even as I brought Reiki practice into conventional medicine back in the 90s, it was always with a focus on self-practice. And I haven't noticed another paper since I documented what we did in the AIDS hospital classes that I taught, where we saw that self-practice was as impactful as receiving Reiki session from somebody else. So, I'm just really, really thrilled to see what you've done and what a great job that you did with it. And thank you.
I appreciate you saying that. And you have been an inspiration. Shamani's been an inspiration. Everyone on this panel, you're probably all cited in my dissertation. But I think through indwelling and through becoming the inquiry as transpersonalists do, the idea of sovereignty really emerged the largest. And so I went from Reiki, wanting to have a study on Reiki, to self Reiki, even based on my own practice and having, for example, I was diagnosed with a polyp at one point, had surgery, and my doctor said the polyp wasn't there. And I was like raking, every day, very focused. And I'm not saying there's causality there, but I'm saying I think that it was, contributed to the resolution of that polyp. I think there's so much more that we can really uncover and discover about our own innate ability to heal ourselves. So yeah, but I know that you're a big proponent of self Reiki. I've seen some of your social media. And given that, like, I'm also considering working with like the Women's Initiative here locally that serves the under-resourced women in my community. And how else can we empower women whose fundings are being stripped from them, but to help give them tools like self-Reiki, pro bono. And I would love to do a study with them. But I appreciate your comments. So thanks, Pamela.
I'm not seeing everybody at the same time on the screen, but let's hear from
We've got Lisa. We've got Lisa
yeah.
with Paul. Yeah.
Right.
So Lisa first.
Lisa.
Yes, kudos to both of you. I have notes here, but there were some key components that, as I read your original documents and research, and then we talked about it, and then listening to you today, really, we made a good choice. I'm so pleased. I wanted to first, again, talk to you, Rona. Having been a musician for a number of years, that was something that was really dear to my heart. But one thing that you said that struck me is, where we match them before we escalate up into another, say, geometric shape or power in order to empower and become powerful. And so I see that having resonance with coming into a dimensionality. Paul had asked about, some of this, how this might work. And I see the dimensionality of coming into an attunement, which is partially with Reiki or what we would do with healing touch or other biofield therapies. And from that, we rise together so that we bring this, you come into a place of not overpowering them, but to, again, to speak to Kiki, acknowledging their sovereignty and then lifting together in raising, however that more balanced, coherent field is, to allow them to reach a more expanded place of flow. So I found that really striking, as you talked about near the end, about being that match. And perhaps I was curious about how that might be reflective in the difference between, say, male response and female biologic response to some of the instrumentation that was done. And I didn't know if you had any thoughts about that.
Well, we didn't check for male and female response with the brainwaves. And of course, we need to do so much more studies to understand it properly. This was the initial study, just launching the field. I'm sure there is, because in geometry, of course, we know that basically the rounder shapes are considered more feminine, the more vectoric shapes are considered more masculine. You have a vectoric and rounded shape basically for each geometry. But there is so much more research that we have to do for me to say anything definitive at this point.
Thank you. Thank you. Returning to Kiki, the piece about sovereignty is, I think, one of the most critical anchors that so much of this future rests upon, and authority over the self as opposed to authority over others. The self capacity for coherence is really so much about what we do. As my background in not only biofield, but in nursing, one of my main mentors would be Martha Rogers, who was very much into looking at the pan-dimensionality and interdimensionality of human beings. And I feel that the two of you reached into that with your research. And so I just commend you for placing the anchor in sovereignty. I think that is something that is so much a way to reach those millennials and those Zenjis, to try to be able to give them that authority over themselves. Because I feel like sometimes having some of those in my own familial heritage here and lineage, that they feel very much disempowered in ways that has been affected on a very deep level. And so the fact that you reached out to young college students was just admirable. And I want to see more of that. I'd love to see that being translated across campuses throughout the nation and the world. So thank you both very much. It's been a privilege to be with spending this time with you.
Thanks, Lisa. And back to Paul.
Sure, thank you. And then to Sham. Mine, it's just a comment, kind of a big picture comment question. What would it be like if we had people doing self-Reiki while they were being treated to their sound therapy, Rona? I just wonder how that would be received and taken into the body.
Again, we have to test it. Basically, also with the sound medicine, the idea is the person can relax, so they get into a form of a meditative state. I wouldn't want them, as a practitioner, I wouldn't want them to concentrate. Like, I would like them to relax and let the body do the work with no form of mind being there. But of course, we have to test it, in a controlled trial with this condition and this condition to see really what is the result. This is just my perspective on it.
Hey, Lisa, I don't know if you meant to do it, but you said Zen G as opposed to Gen Z.
Gen Z, oh yeah, I did.
I'll
how
take
cool is that?
Zen G as the mother of two Zen G kids. Like, yeah, 100%.
I've just created a new
I love it. No, I
vernacular,
love
right?
it. I fully love it. And it actually relates to the obvious questions that I have for you, Kiki, about the work and extension. So many ways to extend both of your research, and I know that you will. And Pamela and I have had very, deep and lovely conversations about Reiki as a contemplative practice. Kiki, you showed, the Contemplative Center there at Virginia as a potential site for integrating Reiki. And it's wonderful to see this direction in both of your work to explore the biofield as something more than just something that someone else does to you. And particularly Kiki, your research really demonstrates that this isn't just about having someone beam energy at me, but there is a training component. As you know, there was an attunement process. And so the obvious question that a typical scientist would ask is, okay, but what if you just compared that to someone who just placed their hands on them and didn't get the attunement, right? And as you know, lots of people like to talk about it in terms of a placebo vein. But if you were to explore it from a contemplative lens and explore the role of interoception and biological sovereignty, I am just curious what you think you might find were you to do a comparison like that.
The difference between someone who's attuned and someone who's not.
Essentially, right? You just train someone and you just say, hey, 10 minutes, you're going to put your hands here. And they don't have an attunement. They're just told to put their hands there. And, the others are actually given the attunement because as we know, energy flows, right? If you simply touch, it's not that it's not energy. We're not controlling for energy per se. But would you consider this, and Pamela, I'd love for you to jump in here. Would you consider just the touching of oneself like this without any attunement or even training a contemplative practice?
I think there have been studies on the healing qualities of touch. So I think that there might be an interesting neck and neck kind of result there. I have gotten a massage before and wondered if the massage therapist was attuned to Reiki because I could feel energy coming through. So it's just a different channel. I think there's intentionality is important. But we do know that Reiki comes from primordial consciousness, which sounds a little nebulous, but that would be an interesting study. You mentioned UVA, and I have reached out to the Contemplative Science Center there, the Circle Lab, to see if the director there would be interested in looking into Reiki. I would love to get some biomarkers on it, to see about the, like HRV or EEG. I'm curious to see how self Reiki, um, the brain patterns, how they might relate to other micro contemplative practices, or if it has its own signature. Because there seem to be, from the qualitative results, there seems to be a consciousness piece, even though the participants maybe didn't use that word. A lot of them said centered, feeling centered, and we can talk about that like diamond within that I think that they're accessing. But I would love to collaborate with the UVA Contemplative Commons here in Charlottesville down the street, to look into that. But yeah, to have a sham practice as a control group would be great. And I wouldn't be surprised to see if, kind of like in my study, they had health related articles that they were reading, and they did improve. I think part of being in an experiment, there's you know not the placebo, but there's another effect of just being in an experiment where you have an expectation of an improvement or possible improvement. But that would be an interesting to look at.
Thank you.
But we're coming to the end of our time, and I definitely wanted to remind the audience of two things. One is it came up in the chat and was answered in the chat, but in case everyone hasn't seen that, this recording will be available starting tomorrow morning. So for those of you who may have had colleagues or friends who would have liked to be here, please let them know. And that, of course, will go out to the Chi mailing list. But the other thing is something to follow up on of what Shamini said is this award will be bestowed annually. So if any researchers are out there who are coming to the end or even just beginning a small study, keep this in mind. Please let people in your biofield networks know about this, especially biofield researchers. And maybe we could end with just a few comments from Kiki and Rona about how you would encourage practitioners to team up with researchers to answer the abiding questions in biofield research and biofield therapy. Either one of you want to start off with a few words of wisdom to younger researchers?
I would say just go for it. I mean, just go for it. Find, read studies or look for someone who's interested in what you do and reach out, send an email. If that's not responded, send another email or follow up. Reach out to people, communicate, and just do the work, and it will be okay.
And find someone who, as Kiki would have said, who combines the rigor and the respect.
You have to be that someone.
That is the key. Well, of course, you are going in with that combination, but you have more of the respect if you're a practitioner and less of experience with the scientific rigor. So it's important to go into the study with that kind of equipoise of both aspects. Any final thoughts, Kiki?
Well, just to add on to that, I did my research as part of my doctoral study. So my support was with my dissertation committee, and I was really lucky to have Marilyn Schlitz as my chair, and I had Natalie Dyer as on my committee, and Dr. Elfers. So I felt like I had a real dream team. I had a lot of guidance, so it did take me going back to school, and it took me watching Shamani's TED Talk. I knew there was science behind what I was doing. And I just I have to be a part of this. I like signed up for school at 3 a.m. But I think, have the passion, be your inquiry, reach out to everybody. Like Rona said, you'll find your way, you'll find the support, you'll find the alignment. And just know that when we're aligned with our purpose, we can make it happen.
Thank you again. Any final comments, Paul or Shamini?
What a fabulous way to close, Richard.
Yeah.
Thanks for asking that question, and Kiki and Rona for giving your thoughts on that. It is a journey, and it takes like a team and passion to find your way through.
Yeah.
Agree. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, everyone who's joined us today. May the field be with you always.
Thank you so much.
Great. Bye, everyone.